Or good afternoon for those that might be not from the Pacific time zone. Thank you very much for joining today. We'll get started in exactly 60 seconds to give everyone a moment to arrive, and then we'll jump right in. So we'll resume in 60 seconds. Thank you. For those arriving in the last little bit, we're just going to get going in about 30 seconds just to let people arrive, but we'll start promptly at that time. Okay, I think we'll get started. Thanks everyone for attending today's webinar, Applying SAP Clean Core Enforcement to Document Automation and Archiving. This is the first of several webinars we'll be doing this year, focused on how SAP's evolving architecture and models translate into real-world implementation decisions. As you'll hear today, DocuFlow is closely aligned with SAP's direction, including Clean Core, cloud-forward architecture, and AI-ready execution models. And we'll focus specifically on what that means for document automation and archiving. First, one housekeeping item before we dive in. You'll see at the top of the screen where that orange arrow is focused, the Q&A panel available in your webinar controls. Please feel free to submit questions at any point during the session. We'll address questions as they come up as best we can, and we've also reserved dedicated time at the end of the session for live Q&A. Today's session will run about 30 minutes, followed by 15 minutes for questions. And now for some introductions. Joining me today are Darren Peluso, CTO at VersaFile, and Sean Fitzpatrick, our CEO. Between the two of them and the extended team, they've worked across more than 250 SAP environments over the course of their careers, covering everything within the SAP platforms and platform evolution, as well as the various applications and acquisitions. Today, we're going to be talking specifically around our experience with attachments, data archiving, and content-centric process automation. That experience gives them a practical view into what works, what doesn't, and why areas like document automation are now coming under increased scrutiny as SAP tightens Clean Core expectations. Within that context, I'll hand things over to Sean Fitzpatrick, CEO, who will start by framing how SAP's Clean Core direction is all evolving in the context of documents and content. Over to you, Sean.
Great, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. So first off, thank you to everyone for carving out some time today from your busy schedules to join us. Our session today will, like Mike said, address the above agenda items. Total time around 30 minutes, including some time for Q&A at the end. So let's get moving through. So at the outset, I want to do a quick overview of DocuFlow and PR. So our organization started in the content management space a few decades ago, and many of our team members grew out of various acquisitions with FileNet and then IBM and Microsoft and other companies. As we were delivering projects over the last number of years, we kept getting asked to build custom content integrations with SAP over and over and over again. So in 2018, we released our product called DocuFlow, configurable product that allowed for bidirectional content archiving and integration between SAP and various content management repositories. Today, the product provides really three core areas of functions and continues to grow. The first and most common is intelligent archiving, which really allows us to do SAP outbound attachment and data archiving, all the standard stuff. But it also does SAP inbound linking from content repositories to SAP and metadata sync between SAP and the content repositories. Product's also SAP certified, allows customers to do those foundational use cases to run a lean and clean SAP environment. So building on all the archiving stuff is bucket number 2. And that's where our advanced metadata capabilities really come to shine. Allows us to provide configurable task and process automation within SAP. Customers use these capabilities to streamline and automate those SAP tasks and processes that have just traditionally required a lot of manual data entry, lots of email-based collaboration, and spreadsheets for tracking, etc. So we try and automate and streamline those with the tools that we have, all with no code. Continuing on to our third bucket, we have our pre-built SAP-based solutions, ranging from SuccessFactors integration to accounts payable automation to our new AI and AI solution that we're coming out with for operating procedures and work instructions. And that's something that we're working on today and hope to have released here in 2026. So another simplified view of DocuFlow really has us at the center between your ERP and your preferred content management system. So starting on the left of your screen over here, we see ourselves as repository agnostic. This is a sample of content systems we support. There are many others. And if there's a specific one that you would prefer in your organization, we can usually extend that out to a new bidirectional connector in around 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the level of complexity and needs that you have. All of the arrows are bidirectional, so we can flow documents and metadata in both directions. This is a critical foundation for our automation solutions, both pre-built and whatever you may dream up once you have the tools implemented. Today, we support legacy ECC, S4 on-prem, S4 on RISE, S4 public, and we also recently added SuccessFactors support, and in progress is a connector for Workday. And we'll have other ERPs that we continue to support over time. So while attachment and data archiving are the activities that you must do to keep your SAP system performant and cost efficient, really the real fun begins and the real value shows up when we can bring business value to your users with our pre-built SAP solutions or our task and process automation capabilities. And so by avoiding yet another document management system and using what you already have, we can also help every customer lower their total cost of ownership around archiving and SAP content management. And that's typically why customers are buying from us today. A, lower TCO, B, automate tasks and processes, and 3, a little bit smaller but still relevant, is providing that better governance capabilities. So here's a variety of current customers who are enjoying, a great business value from their solution based on DocuFlow technology today. Almost all customers use our technology for attachment and data archiving, but over 50% are also using the platform for automation and advanced integration solutions. For example, Fujifilm are integrating documents centrally between SAP and Salesforce. At TransAlta, they're using our advanced SAP DMS solution to streamline and automate document information records, or DIRs, updates and revisioning. So let's talk SAP Clean Core. So last year it seemed Clean Core was a 1 or a 0. Either you were Clean Core or you weren't. And of course, that was not reality for most organizations. They just couldn't start with all of a sudden being Clean Core. Maybe if you're going greenfield. So we're glad to see that SAP has come out with this concept of Clean Core A, B, C, or D. It allows teams to better assess where they are and build out a roadmap on how to get to A, which is really quite difficult considering companies have been building customizations on their platform literally for decades. And so for those taking a non-greenfield approach, it will take some time, as most vendors are not even fully Clean Core A at this time. I'll give you an example. I was at an ASAG conference last year, and the team from ExxonMobil were presenting their roadmap to S4 over the coming years, and it was a number of years. In their blueprints, they were 95% Clean Core. Well, what was the other 5%? The other 5% were features or functions that still needed delivery by SAP or other partners, or would need rewrites into adjacent kind of side-by-side extensions. So the point is, very few will be there out of the gates, and that's just our reality. but it is prudent to build a roadmap to get there and work with vendors that are committed to get there. Because there is good value, there is good benefit by getting there. Other areas we unexpectedly see Clean Core come up a bit more aggressively is with the release of S4 2023 and 2025, where some of these attachment management features for their new capabilities only support CMIS for content integration and no longer support Archive Link. So we're starting to see some of that pop up in organizations. And so again, a reason to have a modern SAP archiving solution in place so you can address those use cases with CMIS versus just Archive Link. Be on the lookout for those. Another area we see changes are with ILM data archiving. So SAP discontinued use of user exits in 2025 that some legacy archiving solutions were using to meet some of their ILM requirements. So this could cause retrieval issues in the future if you don't take corrective action. So another thing to keep an eye out for. So today, Clean Core A means your SAP system is pristine. So within its boundaries, no custom code, no add-ins, no transports, etc. And so any integrations, add-on solutions, or customizations are done through SAP approved extensibility points, such as published APIs or side-by-side extension availability within SAP BTP. Furthermore, your processes are likely taking a fit to standard first approach if you're in Clean Core A. Again, helping you to avoid customizations and unique configurations. And for common business processes, you really have to question why you need customization in the first place. Does the value or the benefit outweigh the cost of creating that variant, sustaining it, and then the technical debt that could stifle more agile updates to your systems and innovations and access to new features? So important things to think and consider. So at DocuFlow, we started our journey by focusing really on 4 key pillars to provide Clean Core A options for our customers today. So it starts with being SaaS and cloud focused and providing a platform that's configurable and truly a no-code solution. And that continues on with maintaining key principles and differentiators that we support multiple ECM vendors in the back end for your repository. Unlike traditional ECM vendors, they're very locked into their own repositories, and that locks you in as well. DocuFlow will always be repository agnostic, so allowing you to store attachments, output, data archives, along with metadata into any repository with just pure configuration, no code required. Metadata is increasingly becoming important for businesses to achieve automation. Frankly, it's really difficult to do automation without that metadata. And to get some real, what I call, value-added AI use cases, and you need to really think beyond just simple archiving and storage. Yes, you need to check those boxes, but while you're doing that, by adding metadata, gives us so much more to work with when it comes to automation down the road or getting into prepackaged solutions in AI. And I'm talking about like real business value-added AI. So by adding metadata, we can trigger just more robust and automated governance processes as well, which can save you money. We can trigger task and process automation, like I said, save your users time. And then this rich context of metadata to content or to chunks of content to feed your organization's AI use cases is also becoming more and more valuable, and some great stuff coming out this year around that. So the more context you have, the more accurate and reliable results you're going to get, not only with your task and process automation, but with generative AI as well. What else do I talk about in this area? All in all, like context to what you're doing at the moment in SAP, and saving you time versus scouring through documents looking for a specific piece of information. All this metadata allows us to make this possible and provide a better solution for customers. As we get into more advanced use cases, document routing becomes important. Again, remember, not all repositories are created equal. Some have limitations on folder sizes or repository sizes, and so we need this routing to address those issues. Some organizations are under different levels of governance and compliance and need flexibility where their content gets stored in their repository as well. So intelligent document routing is driven by rules and metadata. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Also common across our customer base is the concept of inbound to SAP processing and linking. So content comes in from all sorts of different sources, including email, portals, integration services, and more, third-party apps. So when the content comes in, it may only have minimal metadata. And so we need to find just enough to go up into SAP, find a business object in SAP, and create that attachment link, and then back to the document in the repository, add some more metadata. Again, this is all expected to be available with no coding needed. Finally, all sorts of things can go bump in the night during the day or whenever, whether it be cloud outages or internet interruptions. Clean core systems have to have built-in resiliency and recovery performance, and frankly, just some forgiveness for our users. More than ever than before, as more and more things are just kind of out of our control, and the volumes are increasing around these systems. So that's also very important. So in summary, our cloud and SaaS first approach will continue to make advanced features available in DocuFlow, all with no code and no transports to SAP, so that we fall within that Clean Core A set of guidelines. Finally, this is my last slide before we take a look at a demo of DocuFlow. So this is a simplified architecture outlining our Clean Core approach using Microsoft SharePoint Online as an example repository. Again, this would equally apply to Box or any IBM repository or AWS S3 repository. We've got repositories with nChoice as an example of ELO. So there's tons that are out there. So let's walk through the process. So starting at number 1 up here, as attachments are added to, excuse me, SAP business objects, either through GOS or through DMS or a third-party tool that's attaching attachments to a business object, or even as output is created by SAP, such as a purchase order, for example. DocuFlow is going to use either Archive Link or CMIS to capture the document and flow that to DocuFlow for processing. So key thing, excuse me, to remember is that DocuFlow is capable of both Archive Link and CMIS. So both standards are available within SAP. SAP is not deprecating Archive Link. Future development may be focused on CMIS, but it's not going away. Excuse me. Number 2, the DocuFlow rules engine will then determine if the document requires further processing or simply a basic archive action with only system metadata. The processing, if processing is required, then number 3 occurs, where DocuFlow communicates with BTP and our APIs within Cloud Foundry, which will execute the tasks of gathering the metadata it requires to complete its processing. Number 4 then comes into play, returning the metadata we need, which will then be consumed through DocuFlow over to number 5, which allows DocuFlow to properly route and file the document in the right location, create new folders if needed, apply metadata that we transfer down from SAP to folders or documents, set security if required, launch workflow processes. All of this metadata is used to trigger, in this case, Power Automate processes. Maybe we set tags and notifications or execute some other automation, including integrations into other enterprise systems or portals, perhaps Salesforce or SuccessFactors or what have you. So how about we go see this in action? So I'm going to hand it over to Darren now to show us what we just talked about. Darren, over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Should be able to see that all right.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, let's take a look today at some of the integration patterns that Sean was talking about. I'm going to show two interfaces today, as some of you may be using Fiori. So I'll start there in a web browser looking at some Fiori interfaces. I'll also show us over in the SAP GUI, and we'll see how it works over there. And today we will be using SharePoint as our backend repository, but as Sean mentioned, we have a couple options. So let me open up a purchase order here, standard purchase order, as you'd see in SAP. And let's go ahead and attach a document into this PO object. You can see in the top right, I have this little paper clip that will open up our UI, where we can act what we call a Dockflow Doc Manager. And this is where we can see all of the current attachments and where it will allow us to create new attachments. You'll notice there already is one attachment shown in this screen. But what I will mention or bring your attention to is you can see that last line where it says virtual link from purchase requisition. So this is just an example of our capability where we can attach documents from other areas, other objects within SAP and show them in this screen. So this particular Acme amendment is not actually linked to this purchase order. It's linked to the purchase requisition, but it's just shown here as what we call a virtual link. Okay, but let's go ahead and we'll create a new document and attach it to this particular PO. Now, here's an example, as Sean was saying, an example of several backend repositories. So in my particular demo here, I have this configured so I can store into S3 and AWS, Microsoft 365, Google Cloud, et cetera, and we support even platforms beyond this. But this is normally, you might just have one default platform you're storing to, so this would always be defaulted to that particular platform. But for my demo, let's go ahead. As we said, we're going to use Microsoft 365. Let me upload a document here. So I'm going to choose my PO document and go ahead and click OK. So what's happening now behind the scenes, that document is being processed by Dockflow. It is being uploaded to SharePoint. Metadata, as Sean mentioned, we'll take a look. We have a rule running there that will indicate for POs we want to collect metadata from SAP. So we'll use OData interface to get that metadata. And we also have a rule that will route that. So it's going to create some folders over in SharePoint as well. All part of our, as we'll see, our middleware configuration. But let's go ahead and take a look now at our attachments. You see that new attachment I just loaded? Let's go ahead and view that. This is pretty amazing technology as well. I'm going to click on that. And what you're going to see is a new tab pop open. And this is the SharePoint viewer. All right. So one of the things we get when we leverage SharePoint in some of the other platforms is we get to use their viewers as part of the technology stack. Why is that a good thing? Unlike SAP, which their viewer is okay, but has somewhat limited capabilities, especially for things like file types, etc. The SharePoint viewer itself has support for over 250 file formats. It is extremely efficient on the wire protocol to view this. So it does not need to download this document to the desktops of the users and store it in their computers. It will just stream this over the internet. And so it's extremely efficient, especially as you get into larger documents. Okay. So I'm going to pop over to now to SAP GUI here. So you can see this is running on my Mac, but so it looks maybe slightly different than if you're using Windows. But this is our standard thick SAP GUI application. I'm going to open up that same purchase order here and just take a minute to open up. All right. So in the top right, we have our service for object. All right. I'm going to drop that down. Let's take a look here. You'd see all your standard, and we can leverage, your standard create, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and show you again our Doc Manager interface here, because so similar capabilities we saw in Fiori as this pops open. I can see that amendment again. That was linked to the PO requisition, not to this actual PO object itself. But again, we see that in a virtual view, and you can click on it and view it right from the screen. There we see the document I have attached, actually itself. And we also have this ability to have this virtual view of documents. So again, I can see the requisition and purchase order. This allows you to do some configuration to show any flow of documents throughout a business process into one screen, which is can be really helpful for users so they don't have to hop between different business objects to see the different documents. Okay, so much like we saw before, store new and assign, I'll go ahead and select my Microsoft 365. Let me select that. I'll go ahead, let me get a document here. I'll go ahead and drop another amendment in here. Drag and drop. So again, that's transferring it over to SharePoint through our Dockflow middleware. As Sean showed in his architecture, it's setting metadata and is filing in a folder in what we call document routing. I come back over to my attachment list, and there we are. We see that new attachment that's been attached. Okay, let me pop over to my world, my web browser again into SharePoint. What I'm going to do is refresh. So we'll see this is my SharePoint library. And as I refresh here, you'll see that folders got created. So as we talked about, document routing. Since this library was empty, when we removed a bunch of stuff from here, we can see it will generate these folders on the fly for us if they do not already exist. And so again, this is what we call document routing. Document routing doesn't have to just create folders within the same library. It can move things between document libraries in the world of SharePoint, between sites, etc. And you'll see right within that vendor, so that top level folder was a vendor, and this particular folder is the PO number. This is all configurable. I'm going to show you how we do that in the Dockflow application, but that's the way this one has been configured. So I'll open that up, and here I see my two documents. So not only can you see the documents, but you can see the vendor name, vendor number, purchase order, all of this metadata from SAP we've pulled across during our metadata enhancement has happened automatically, again, as part of our business rules, and how Sean talked about that. So extremely powerful, all done through the middleware, all done through just configuration and no coding. Okay, so I'm going to pop over now into our middleware. I'll just get that ready here, and I'll show you how we configured both the metadata enhancement and the document routing. So this is our middleware. This is our admin tool where a power user, IT admin can configure the solution. Again, it's all graphical based and no coding. Just want to show you as an example, as Sean was talking about, here's a listing of some of the connections that we have set up for this particular demo machine, but you can see all of the various platforms we could connect to. Just want to show you that. And then here we have several things. We have the event processor. That's really, as Sean mentioned, that's where the resiliency, so you can click on that. You can see all of the processing that's going on in your system, any errors, retries, etc. Then we have metadata augmentation. I'm going to show that during our demo today. Document routing, I'll show that as well. And we'll see how all of that's configured. We also have SAP Link. Won't be part of our demo today, but if you want to see that, please let Sean know, or Yosef, and we can give you custom demos around how we link SAP in as well. So let me open up this particular space, and this is our metadata augmentation. And this is, as Sean mentioned, our rules engine here that we'll be taking a look at. So I have a rule configured here for purchase orders. I'll open this up. And so this is saying, hey, when I see a particular kind of object, and I'll show you where I define the object here, the purchase order object coming from SAP, I want to augment that metadata. We have two ways, endpoints you can augment to. So to be pure Clean Core A, we'll use OData endpoints. And as Sean mentioned, these are all of the way we use the out-of-the-box endpoints that SAP provides on the S4 platform, okay? We support both OData v4 and OData v2. Our other option is RFCs. So if you want to go Clean Core B, and maybe you have some custom code you've had around for a long time, or maybe you have older ECC systems as well you want to leverage, we can call RFCs just like we can OData endpoints. But for today, Clean Core A, let's just look at OData endpoints. So I'll show you here now. We're going to use an OData v4 endpoint, and we're going to use the purchase order endpoint here. Now, how do you get that endpoint? We have a type ahead capability there. And you can see just below that field where it says 3498 services available. So we've gone into the back end, we've communicated with S4, and they've exposed 3,498 different OData endpoints that you can leverage in order to enhance your metadata around documents. Okay, so this is we'll be using this purchase order enhanced field in order to get that. Okay. So now I'm going to scroll down here a bit. We have some helpful, tips built into the tools here, but let's go ahead and take a look at how we mapped the purchase order values from the OData call into the SharePoint column values that you saw in SharePoint. All right, columns are also known as metadata in SharePoint. So here we can see on the left, that field name is the SharePoint column. And on the right is the map value from the OData call. And so we can see company code and vendor name, purchase organization and vendor number, and the purchase order number were all mapped over. And so that metadata is all available in SharePoint. How is that configured? Well, you could, we give you the ability to just say add mapping. You'll have to know what those endpoint values are, which maybe not the easiest. They are the column programmatic names from SharePoint as well as OData. So to make this much easier for, again, your power users or your IT admins, I'll just click this execute query. This will return the example of that OData object into the left-hand side of the pane here. So these are all of the values that purchase order OData endpoint is delivering to us. All right. And then in the middle pane, I can come here and I can say, here's my SharePoint connection I've configured, my demo one. I will go to a site we're using. So I've set up a purchasing site. I am going to select the document library where we want to drop these things. And then I get a list of all the content types. And then from that content type, we can see all of the columns that are available. So now on the left, I have all of the OData endpoint metadata values coming back. And in the middle, I have all of the SharePoint columns. And to map these, you just drag and drop from the left to the right, and that will create the mapping automatically for you, and will create the mapping for you. So very easy. You don't need to know all the technical details behind what OData is providing back or what's been configured over in SharePoint. And anytime you see on the left, you can see what's already been mapped. You can see company code and purchase organization. Those have been mapped. They're green and they indicate they've been mapped. Okay. And once we've drag and drop those over, we can see on the right here, it will show you everything you have completed. Okay. So those are all the ones that have been done. I won't get into too much detail, but you can go into these fields and apply, operations to them, such as trimming, concatenation of values together, etc. So we support all of that as you're adding metadata. Okay, so that's an augmentation rule. So that rule fires on purchase orders, and we will enhance the metadata and update SharePoint with that. Let's now take a look at content routing. So I'll go over to my content system here. Now, routing again is when we want to take a document and from wherever it was originally dropped and move it to a new location. That new location in the world of SharePoint can be a new site, a new document library, or within the current library, a new folder, which is what we've done here. Okay, so let me open up this particular routing rule. So one of the things we allow, you'll notice we have a condition in this one, and this is just to show you an example of how we have, this extra capability to not only are we this rule handles purchase orders, but we're going to handle specific kinds of purchase orders, and those just where our purchase org is 1710. And where do we get that? That was a return from the metadata. All right, so as we got that metadata from that OData call, we can now leverage that as conditional expressions in these rules we write, and as well as the names of the folders, etc., that we want to file these in. And so, for example, why might that be powerful? Well, you might want to put everything for this 1710 organization within a different SharePoint site that has different security applied to it than a different another purchase org, because you may want, you know, your salespeople being able to go to those SharePoint libraries directly and view those things. So you want to control that. Okay, you can see here we are going to create folders, and you can see this token in here. This says first level folder I want to create is from the metadata value called a vendor name that came back, and we're going to put that in the purchase orders library. So purchase orders, it will create a top level folder called vendor name. And then we're going to use the value that came back from that purchase number. So the first time this happens, if it does not exist, it will create those folders. And then once those folders are created, it will just reuse them afterwards. So that's an example of our routing rules and our metadata. And with that, we'll complete our demo, and I will hand it back to Sean and team.
Perfect. Thanks, Darren. Appreciate that. So just keep us moving right along. I want to move right into a Q&A session. There's a couple of questions that have come through on a couple of different channels that I want to address. So the first question that we had, and by the way, folks, remember up at the top menu bar, if you have other questions, you can enter those in. But the first question we had come in was, how is it different from SAP DMS? And so I'll take that, and then Darren, if you want to add color to it, we can. But first off, we need to distinguish which SAP DMS are you talking about? I'm going to assume you're talking about SAP DMS, that's the SAP Document Management Service in BTP, versus the classic DMS module with DIRs that are used for versioning and linking, etc. as well. So assuming it's the BTP DMS service, the key difference is that with that DMS service, you're primarily storing that into SAP Cloud and costs associated with that, versus if you've got a standard enterprise repository that you want to use, Docuflow follows those same patterns, but instead allows you to store those using CMIS into a third-party repository like SharePoint Online or Box or AWS or IBM, etc. The other big difference is that while you can do some light metadata with DMS, our metadata capabilities are much broader and available for purposes beyond just archive and storage. We've got pre-built automations that we talked about. There's collaboration outside of SAP. There's cross-integration with other systems that you may want to do. Now, yes, you could probably do that by using the APIs, but then you're custom building stuff. Whereas with Docuflow, we're providing this configurable solution off the shelf to do that. Darren, anything else you would add to that?
No, I think that was a great summary, Sean. And I'll just highlight again, if you use the BTP solution for that document storage, there's no like user interface into that as well, other than directly from SAP, which may be fine for your use case. Once you've put that content into somewhere like SharePoint or some of the other platforms, you unlock the ability for users to have an interface to that content outside of SAP that you may want, as you had mentioned, Sean, for business needs. And things like external sharing of documents and third-party digital signature products, things like that.
Now, of course, you can do all of those things, but you'll be into customization at that point in time. And again, if you're trying to reduce that technical debt, then we want to avoid customizations. One other thing I would mention is that, again, in the demo, Darren showed SharePoint Online. as part of his demo, but want to make sure that everyone is clear that these capabilities are available in Box, IBM repositories, AWS, Google, nChoice, ELO, and others as well. So
Hey,
want to
Sean,
make sure everyone's
I
clear on
just
that.
I had
Yeah.
a question related to that.
Yeah.
What if someone's got another system they want to keep synced as well, like you mentioned Salesforce, and what happens if I have multiple repositories? That was a question I received.
Yeah, for sure. So Docuflow has the capability to connect to more than one repository. So if you are in fact using multiple repositories in your organization, or even if you need content to be flowing between those repositories, which we've seen some use cases for, one is a system of engagement, and one is a system of record. And so Docuflow has the rules built in to do those use cases as well. So both of those are available. And then we get into this whole concept of what we call hyper-connected content, where, hey, I've got one piece of content that's come into the organization, and I need to share that piece of content with some in Salesforce, and I need to share some of that content with our project portfolio system, and I need to share some of that with SAP as business objects, and I need to share some of that with our support portal or our projects portal. So one piece of content, deeply indexed with lots of metadata, secured, and integrated at multiple record levels in different systems. And that's what we call hyper-connected content. And we're seeing more and more of those use cases come alive. I've got another question that came about. So Darren, I think we talked about this, but maybe worth addressing again. Is CMIS, is it a requirement, or are we still okay with Archive Link? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we support either. So, and it's important to understand there's several protocols coming out of SAP that we support. We support DMS, Archive Link, GOS, all of the standard ways that SAP will want to attach documents. And we support that over HTTPS standard protocol or CMIS. Again, Archive Link can come to us over CMIS or HTTP standard content server protocols, and we support both of those. So you're not stuck one way or the other. And then if you're on public, we support that as well. And again, CMIS being the only protocol that public supports.
Cool, thanks. And then another question that came in is, you spent quite a bit of time on viewers with SharePoint. What about viewers with Box and some of our other platforms that we support?
Yeah, so we leverage the really those best of breed viewers in those platforms. So much like you saw with SharePoint, Box has an amazing viewer for end users. And so we leverage those on all of the platforms where they have good viewing technology that we can enable. And you don't have to leverage those. We think it's a great idea, and most customers do. You can have the fallback to the SAP viewer as well. We just find the vast majority of customers are looking for better cloud-based solutions. So they really do fit the bill there.
Cool. And I think we've got time for one last question. And so this is from a current Docuflow customer, current user of Docuflow, using some of the advanced features of Docuflow, including the UI experience in SAP. Today, to get those into the system, uses transports. What will happen to this, down the road? Is this on the 2026 roadmap for us to address as well?
Yeah, so I'll take that one if you want, Sean. So
yep.
The great thing about this Clean Core that you've seen is it will stand side by side with your current Docuflow implementation. So during an upgrade, you can upgrade your platform. It will continue to operate with everything that you've already built and configured. And then you have the platform now to start moving forward with pure Clean Core. And so you can take all of your current capabilities that may have had a transport, move that to Clean Core, or you could work in a hybrid environment until you're ready to fully move over. So we give you all of that capability. We do not lock you into one or the other.
Perfect. Hey, Mike, so I think maybe I'll hand it over to you. That's the end of our questions. I think we're out of time. Just maybe give you 30 seconds to wrap things up.
Sure. Again, thanks everyone for attending. We did get another question asking if this recording would be available. All attendees will get an email with a link to it, so people will be able to re-review it or share it internally in your organization. We have a few ways here to engage with us. If you want to take a picture of that QR code after I'm done speaking, we'll just leave this on for a minute. So if people want to do that, or we have Josef Hans-Lara, our Director of Business Development, his email is there, as well as Sean, who's been speaking today, his email is there as well. Again, I really appreciate everyone attending and listening to our story around Clean Core. With that, we will sign off, and I'll turn this off in about 30 seconds. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.